Our guest is Mr. Chris Freeman. Chris is the Director of Communications, which is what we do, Director of Communications to the Children's Home Society of West Virginia. And welcome, Chris.
Thank you. I appreciate having us.
Thank you for being here. Now, Chris, our topic is the Children's Home Society of West Virginia. Now, that sounds like a government agency almost with that huge title. But tell us about what the society is really and how it got started.
Well, the Children's Home Society is one of the largest nonprofit child welfare organizations in the state. We opened our doors in 1896 right here in Charleston on Washington Street.
Wait a minute, 1896?
1896, celebrating 127 years this year.
Yes, you are. Wow. Okay, go ahead.
So what happened is D.W. Comstock from out west came to Charleston. His vision and goal was to find homes for children. Back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, there was a mass amount of children, homeless children in West Virginia.
Why?
So back then, there just wasn't a lot of families to take care of these children. These families were out running different farms. They didn't have time for them. These children just ran off on their own, so to speak. So his vision was to find permanent homes for these children. So on May 4th, 1896, we got together with 4 churches here in Charleston, which was St. John's Episcopal, First Presbyterian, Christ Methodist, and the Charleston Baptist Temple. And along with a representative from the YMCA, that is how the Children's Home Society came about. And then T.C. Carter, the Reverend of the Baptist Temple, became our first board president. And then we went from there. We had what we called the Davis Child Shelter. We solicited funds from the Senator Gassaway Davis to open the Davis Child Shelter. So Comstock's vision was starting to come true.
Well, Gassaway got into a lot of things when he was a senator, Davis and Elkins, you know, and all of this. So that's interesting because I doubt if there are very many people out there who know this. And so, how many shelters do you have now?
Well, we still have the Davis Child Shelter after all these years. It's located right here in Charleston. And then along with the Davis Child Shelter, we have 7 other shelters. So we manage 8 emergency child shelters throughout the state. And those shelters are set up for kids that are in crisis. So if they need a quick place to stay, a safe place to stay, then they come to our shelters.
Well, you mentioned kids. So that tells me, or that implies to me, that you only take care of kids running around and doing all these things and not babies.
Correct. Now, when it comes to infants or babies, we're looking at foster care. Our shelters, the kids in our shelters are placed at ages 7 to 18. But when we're talking about newborns and babies, then we're looking at our foster care, possibly our adoption program, or our Right from the Start Birth to 3 programs.
So foster care is different than adoption?
Yes, it is.
Are most of the kids that are adopted put into foster homes first to see if they are compatible?
They are. There's certain ways that can go about. So if let's say Chris Freeman would like to become a foster parent. So I contact the Children's Home Society. I can do that via our website. I can call a contact number. We do have 28 offices throughout the state, and all of our locations offer foster care, so we do that statewide. So if you're interested in becoming a foster parent or an adoptive parent, you would contact us. And then there's, of course, different trainings and things that you have to do to become a licensed foster parent. Now, to be an adoptive parent, then you can do the exact same thing. Reach out to us, and we can open your home as just an adoptive home. But here's the difference. So if you want to become a foster or an adoptive parent, then you might have to wait a while because these kids come into emergency care. They're placed in a foster care home. So then if that child goes through, and their biological parents will go through what they call the court systems and an improvement period and things of that nature. And if by the time that improvement period is over, if those parents have not done what the courts have asked them to do, then their biological rights are terminated. So then if that's the case, then that child that's placed in care will then become eligible for adoption. Now, if that child's in a foster home, then that opens up that foster home to be able to adopt.
So most of these kids, or what percentage of these kids actually have parents that you have to take them from?
Well, that's a very good question. Majority of those kids that come into care. Now, granted, your first instinct is reunification when a child comes back into care, but we're seeing a huge percentage of kids that come into care that are eligible for adoptions, just because if you cast back a few years ago of the opioid epidemic, and we're dealing with a lot of those kids right now.
It's still going on.
Yes, yes. So we're dealing with that, and those kids are being eligible to be adopted.
So we have alcohol abuse, drug abuse, physical and sexual abuse. So are these all criteria for taking a child from his parents?
Yes, and how that works is a neighbor might call into the 1-800 hotline, or a social worker from a school might see or hear something. They do interviews, then they'll contact the Department of Health and Human Resources in that county, and then they make a referral. The department does an investigation, and if they feel there's enough evidence to remove that child, then the child's removed from the home, and then they call agencies like us to see if we have foster parents available for that child to be placed.
I remember just recently where a neighbor called about one of their neighbors who was keeping the kids locked in the barn.
That it was a very tragic story, and that should have been dealt with quicker, but those kids would be removed from that environment and then placed into foster care, and then in hopes of finding a permanent home, safe permanent home.
Okay. So you have to find them a safe home. So you first take this child, let's say this being abused, or their parents just can't take care of them, won't take care of them, whatever, and you find a foster home to put them in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, that foster home, I would assume it's something, or someone like you, because I know you were a foster parent, that knows how to take care of these kids. And I would assume that the foster parent people have been screened so you know they're not abusive or alcoholics or on opioids. And they take these kids, and I would assume, maybe not rightly so, that some of these kids are problems in themselves because they have not had adequate bringing up.
Yes, we see a lot of that, especially in your 12 to 13, your teenagers. They have no parental guidance, so they really haven't learned any basic living skills, and that's what we do. We're there to help them, to guide them, to teach them how to have everyday living skills, basic living skills, educational skills.
And how to accept commands or recommendations from their parents.
Well, and as we all know as parents, I mean, it is tough to have your child, direct your child.
Your own child, yeah.
Yes, but we also, our staff at Children's Homicide is one of the best you'll ever come across. And I'm a little biased, but they are. But they know the right tools to work with these children, to be able to guide them and to teach them.
It might occur to me that some people who are adoptive parents have their own children, may have had or have adoptive kids, and they've gotten interested in this. I know some couples that have. And when they see one that really fits in, they might want to adopt them. Do they have first rights to adopt the child that has been with them in foster care than somebody else?
They do, because when we place a child, if they're placed in that home for 6 months and they have already shown have told us that yes, we do want to adopt this child, then we will recommend to the child's department worker, so they can recommend to the courts that yes, this foster parent wants to adopt this child. They've been placed for 6 months, 8 months, or longer. The relationship there, the bond is there, so the courts will look at that, and then the adoptive hearing will begin.
So you have people that are trained to just watch the children even when they're in foster care.
Oh yes. When a child is placed in foster care from the department, they have the department is basically their legal guardian when the child comes into care. So when the child is placed in a foster care setting with us, we have a foster care social worker that goes out to the home, makes regular visits, will provide whatever programs, needs, necessities that kid needs, and the foster parents, because we're there for the foster parents as well. We provide what they need to help meet the needs of that child, and we will work with them until the entire process is over.
Well, I can think about how difficult it might be for myself or a couple to take in a child, particularly the first time they foster, become foster parents. That's a big decision.
It is. It is a huge decision. It is a life-changing decision, to be honest.
And many of these people, give me some of the reasons why they do this. I can think of one. They've tried to have children and were unable to.
And that's one of the big reasons why some folks get it. That's the reason why my wife and I got into foster care, because we couldn't have a child of our own. But we also see foster families that their kids have gone to college. Now they've got an empty nest, so they are a little depressed. They missed having those kids, so they call us. There are people out there that genuinely just simply want to help, that will open their homes as a foster parent and say, you know what, this child is ready for adoption. Find a great home for this child. We still want to remain foster parents because we're here to help. And
what about children that have serious emotional problems, which I would think is relatively common when you have children who have been in an abusive home or a home that has neglected them?
In the beginning, it's very, very tough because you have to watch what you say, how you act, because you never know what could trigger that child's emotional damage that they're coming with. But again, our staff train our foster parents, and our foster parents understand all these issues, and then we're there behind the scenes to help with any type of emotional issue or neglect problem that those kids might have. And to be honest, all a child really needs is that family that shows them attention, loves them. They change pretty quickly. You'd be surprised.
Well, I would think during COVID, when the schools were having or closed and all, and some parents turned to being teachers, not all parents are good teachers, and if these kids are being neglected anyways, what programs do you have for these people who become adoptive parents to teach at home?
Right.
Do you have many that teach at home?
We do, and we have a program called Parents for Teachers. And what that program does is we have staff that will go in and help these parents understand the educational needs. I mean, I'm one. All these kids use iPads these days, and they're on Schoology. It's not easy to get through that. So what our program does with that is to go in to teach the parents, help them learn what is going on and how to teach those foster care kids through these avenues.
What is the We Can program?
The We Can program is a volunteer program. It models after the Big Brother, Big Sister Mentee Mentor program. So what we do, we have mentors that will take in a child in their home for a minimum of 6 months, be that mentor to that child, will help them with school, we'll take them to movies, we'll just be there for them if they have questions, concerns, or just we'll go shopping with them. Just treat them like a big brother, big sister, so to speak.
Are these kids that are only in adoptive care, or can you take, let's say I have a child that's having a problem, but I don't want to give them up. You have programs to come in and help me?
Yes, we do. And that one of those programs are called the Safe at Home program. So our goal there is to come in and work with the family so we don't have to remove the child from the home.
Yeah, that makes it maybe a little easier if you have an intelligent child and parents, because things during COVID got very difficult.
Oh yeah.
And the government is making it even more difficult. You know, it's just, we can't get into some of the stupid things that they do, but they don't always make raising a family easy and feeding a family easy. So what is the transitional living program you have?
Transitional living, that kind of corresponds with our independent living program as well. So if you're in the transitional living program, and that's open up to 16-year-olds and older, then what we do there is we try to teach you those life skills that you need to be on your own. So that could anything, how to balance a checkbook, how to do regular things around the house. So once we teach you that, and then once you get to 18 years old, you can qualify and transfer into the transitional living program, or I'm sorry, the independent living program, to where we help you find housing, we help you find a job, we help teach you how to wash clothes, do dishes, anything and everything that you do in your basic living day to day. Those are what those two programs work together to do.
Now, in the old days, in my day, those were things you automatically learned at home.
Yes.
You're telling me these kids don't get that kind of direction in this day and age, generally speaking?
They do not. Some do, some don't, but the majority of the kids that come into care have to learn that while they're with us, and that's why those two programs flourish.
Well, you also have a program for therapy services. What is that?
Well, under our therapy, we offer all types of different therapy services. There could be in-home therapy, group therapy, one-on-one therapy. All of our shelters offer therapy, individual therapies or group therapy when the kids are available. We have in-school therapy, educational therapy, and we do this all over.
Well, that's interesting. So you have these kids that are down here, they're with adoptive parents now, and you have regular meetings with them to teach them certain goals?
We do. Our social workers will go out at least twice a month, face-to-face visits. And then we sit down and we talk about concerns, what those children need, and then we have multiple phone calls throughout the month with those children as well. Our staff also perform different types of evaluations, care plans, so we know exactly what's going on and what type of services those kids need.
Well, those family support centers, are those ones where you get several of the kids maybe together and try and teach them instead of individual ones?
Right, the family support centers, and we also have the resource centers. There's a little bit of difference there, but the family support centers offer a little therapy coming out of that as well. It's more of a referral-based program.
Yeah.
So when you come in and need something, our family support center social workers will track down those services that they need and then hook those families up. Our resource centers are the ones that we give back to the community. So if you have a family in your community that needs food, clothing, toys, educational needs for those kids, they can come to us, and our resource centers live off of in-kind donations from the community.
Well, what about the Child Advocacy Center? What is that?
The Child Advocacy Center is located in Martinsburg, and that we work with law enforcement. That is a very unique program that we work with law enforcement to do forensic interviews on sexually abused children. And they'll come in, and we have a whole studio set up that the law enforcement will come in and do the one-on-one interviews with the children, and then that's that program itself. And then we have workers that come in and work with those kids as well.
Well, that would be a tough one, because these kids, many who are abused, they're given the story, well, this is something special just for you and me, a secret, you can't tell anybody else, and this and that. So I would think that's a tough one to break.
It is a very hard position, because some of the stories that they just break your heart when you hear them and you hear those interviews. But again, our staff are trained and know how to deal with those situations.
Now, are we talking about the kids that are in foster care, or the kids that are in their parents' care that are going through these things, or both?
Most of the cases that we receive, they're the kids that before they come into the system. And then once those interviews are done, then of course there's obviously enough evidence there to remove that child and then place him or her into care.
Well, what are the 4 family support centers? What do they do?
Well, those 4 support centers, family support centers, we have one in Huntington, one in Parkersburg, one in Martinsburg, and one in Jefferson County. And those are the support centers that will go out and find the resources for the families, for like the therapy services, or if a child needs an educational service, then we can provide a referral system for that, and to find those organizations within that community to come and help that family.
What is the after-school program? I'm trying to put this all together. You guys do a whole lot of things there.
That we do. We do.
What is that after-school support?
The after-school program is a program that's set up in Parkersburg. They work with the school systems, and the kids can come and do activities after school during the summers. They also have a summer youth program out of that program in Parkersburg. So anything, if kids, let's say they don't have any place to go after school,
yes,
then they come to our program. So we basically take care of them. We have games. We provide them with snacks, things of that nature, until their parents can come and pick them up.
Well, that's very important, I would think, to get them to relate to other children.
Yes,
because these are a lot of children have problems. They're separated from their parents now, so they can become recluse.
Mm-hmm.
And I would think that is very helpful in that.
It is. We've had a lot of success stories out of that program.
Now, what is the toughest thing that you come first when you're doing foster care? Is it the children, or is it the foster care parents that you choose?
Well, the foster parents that come in, they'll call us. We'll go through an extensive background check. They do all of the trainings to get certified. Once they're open, they're playing the waiting game, so to speak, because they are waiting for those kids to come in. And then when you hear those children, the stories that come in, that's sometimes a tough pill to swallow. When you hear these kids that are really extremely abused and neglected, then you work with the kids, you place them in the home. And in all honesty, one of my toughest things when I worked in direct care years ago, of course, when I said earlier that reunification is the key, but sometimes you might have a foster parent have a child in their home for 7, 8 months, and then all of a sudden the courts decide, well, the biological family, and they have worked hard to get this child back. So when you have to go and remove that child and place it back, which is a goal, the foster parents, that's hard on them.
I would think it'd be hard for that child, too.
It is, but
particularly if that child may not want to go back to his original.
True. However, when the older children, and throughout the process of an improvement period, they do have set up visitation services. So the child can continue to be with their biological parents. So it's just not a huge shock that they go back.
Is that a requirement?
That is a requirement through an improvement period is set in a court order by the courts.
So it's possible that when the parents come in to be with their own child who is in foster care, that there may be some problems there.
Yes, there could be. There could be.
So if you've taken my child from me, or I gave my child away, why do I want to go visit with them?
Right, and honestly, we've seen some of that. But when you work with the biological parents, then they start going through their therapy services, maybe their rehab services, and they start to see better things, better options in life, and they really want to have their children back.
So there is a factor in some of these situations where the family starts missing their child?
Yes, yeah, we've seen that over the years.
Do you see many cases where the child, even though the court says they can go back to their parents, the children don't want to go back to their parents?
We have seen that as well.
What do you do?
Well, for us as an organization, we have to abide by what the courts say. So we do, if that's the recommendation and that's what the court says to do, then of course we abide by that. We have seen in the past to where children will go back home, and then 6 months to a year later that we get a call from the Department of Health and Human Resources that says this child is back into care, and then we deal with that matter.
So at this point, what is the biggest problem you have? A, getting a child into a foster care or what is done there, and B, the adoptive process. What are the real hurdles that you have?
One of the biggest issues that we face right now, and I'm sure other agencies like ours face, is just foster parents. At any given day, right now, there's over 6,000 children in out-of-home care. So
in West Virginia?
In West Virginia. And we are constantly trying to recruit foster parents. On any given day throughout the year, Children's Home Society has placed 250 to 300 kids in our foster care system statewide. So we are always recruiting foster parents because the demand is there. So that is one of the largest hurdles that we face.
Okay, you have some kids that need foster care now, but there are no foster parents. What do you do with them?
Well, unfortunately, that's when the department will call another agency to see if they have an opening. So just on if the other agencies don't, but depending on the age of this child, then they may call us and say, do you have an opening in one of your shelters? That way we can place the child in a safe environment while we look for a foster home.
All right, now let's talk about what it costs to run all of this. It sounds like it's a lot of money. Quickly tell us about where do you get your funds? How do you go about doing it? What's going on?
Okay, well, the Children's Home Society, we operate on a $31 million budget. Wow. So we do, our fundraising goal is $1.75 million a year. We also receive funds for our bed availabilities in our foster care program and our shelter care program. And we also we have a fantastic grant writer that we look for grants throughout all of our programs and locations.
Well, we know that last year you assisted 15,943 children and families.
Yep, that's through.
And that's a lot of work. And they can find you on your website and social media, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Is that and LinkedIn?
Yes.
I want to thank you for taking time to tell our audience about this problem. This is Dr. Richard C. Rashid, hoping you'll see a bright day.